Hi, I'm Mary, a librarian and book reviewer with a focus on stories written for kids, tweens, and teens. Today, I am joined by H.B. Reneau, who is a fantasy author, ER doctor, and proud dog mom who is best known for her character-driven, genre-bending fiction that draws on her experiences in both medicine and the military. When not writing or at the hospital, she can be found hiking, drinking coffee to excess, and getting lost in new cities with her spaniel, Rory. Thanks so much for joining me today, Haley. It's so nice to see you.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about the books that you have going on, but any or all of them, as you'd like.
For sure. No, so great to get to chat with you. Like you mentioned, I'm a fantasy author, and so I'm actually currently writing within one kind of big universe series, if that makes sense. So I have the main series, which is called The Legion of Numos, which is a young adult epic fantasy series that kind of has some cross-worlds portal fantasy elements in it. So it's a little bit of a twist on sort of the classic genre. And then I also write a lot of spin-offs from that main series, kind of all within the same universe, but still keeping kind of that YA fantasy feel, but getting to explore some extra worlds and exciting elements with that.
So you said it's a YA fantasy. Do you feel like you write primarily for that 16 to 20 age range, or where do you think your focus is as far as the age for your books?
Yeah, I would say kind of like YA, and so definitely kind of that high school age period is definitely the most common who I think read the series. Although I've definitely heard from plenty of adults who also love the genre, and so enjoy diving into that. But I would definitely say kind of YA to upper YA is the area where most of my characters' ages kind of fit in that realm. I have one book called The Centist, which kind of he's more in his like early 20s, so that's kind of the one book I would say that kind of steers more into new adult kind of area. But most of them are, yeah, in that young adult age period.
Awesome. What made you want to write books for this age group?
Yeah, I mean, young adult and high school was where I really first fell in love with reading, especially fantasy. So Tamara Pierce and C.S. Lewis and all of those books, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, were a huge influence on me growing up, and that's kind of what made me first want to become an author. Sorry, my dog is wanting to join us here. So that's really what made me first want to become an author, and it's just such an exciting period. You know, this is kind of when kids are first really kind of starting to see themselves in the context where they come from and figure out where they want to go in the future. I love, oh, sorry, I love watching, being able to write about family dynamics and kind of especially exploring complicated family dynamics with parents and siblings really play a big role in a lot of my fiction. And so young adult is really when they're kind of exploring those dynamics themselves.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about those family dynamics and even just like the depth of the characters that you have in your books. I know that a lot of that comes from your experience in your hospital settings. And so, do you pull more, would you say, from your personal life or from things that you experience otherwise? Where do those ideas come from?
I think it's definitely a mixture of both. I come from a really large family, so I have three siblings, and we're all very close. And but definitely working in the hospital, especially the emergency department, you really do see how people's families of origin affect them and kind of affect the people they ultimately end up becoming. Um, it's while I write in the young adult genre, it's definitely we tackle some pretty heavy themes. And so one of my characters, Kira, who's the main character in the main series, has a very fraught relationship with her mother. She was raised by a single mom who struggled with some abusive relationships. And so that kind of factors into Kira's background and kind of how she views relationships going forward. And so that really informed her character. The character of Naval similarly has a very fraught relationship with his father, who struggles with alcoholism. And so I feel like incorporating a lot of these themes can really help kind of drive the story forward, but also really deepen kind of the character's own experiences and help us understand and relate to them on a deeper level.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite character in any of your stories? And if you do, what makes them your favorite?
Oh, it's like asking like your favorite child. I feel like you love them all in such different ways. I think probably so the book that is I'm currently launching a Kickstarter for right now. My most upcoming release is called The Remnant. And it features a character named Basha, who's actually the younger sister of the character we meet in the main series. I think she might be my favorite so far. She has a very kind of snarky personality, very much has kind of this rebellious attitude at the beginning, and really kind of has to step up and fill her older sister's shoes when kind of tragedy strikes. And I think kind of having that combination of sort of this irreverent personality mixed in with the sudden weightiness of her own guilt and grief and sense of responsibility. And that really is kind of what pushes her to really question some of the assumptions that she's had growing up and the assumptions she made about where her life was going to go moving forward. And that's just been really fun to write. She has a really unique voice, and so that's been a lot of fun.
That's great. Yeah, it sounds like the depth of the characters really helps the story feel more real, as opposed to just having, it as a surface level sort of character type. That's great. What kind of research or preparation do you do when you go into writing a story?
It really depends a lot on the story itself. This most recent book was probably my most research heavy. It deals with a lot of like environmental themes, and so the world building is actually heavily influenced by coastal civilizations that are kind of seafaring and exploratory, and also kind of what that looks like in a world where sea levels are rising and kind of how they respond to that from an architectural standpoint, and essentially building cities that layer on top of each other and create this interesting kind of underworld dynamic. So I got like the inspiration for that actually came from a trip I took to Seattle, and Seattle has an underground where it's like essentially an old city that they built on top of. And so that was kind of the initial research that kind of gave me the idea. But it really kind of sent me down this rabbit hole of exploring like how cities around the world are currently trying to respond to climate change and what that looks like and how that affects other aspects of the culture in terms of education and economy and things. So,
Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know that about Seattle, but now I'm going to go look at it. That's really interesting.
yeah, it's kind of this little known history, and you can actually take a tour of like the Seattle Underground tour where they'll take you down into the subterranean level beneath the main city and kind of tell you the old history of early Seattle back in the 1800s. So I would definitely recommend it.
Oh, wow, cool. Okay, I'm adding it to my bucket list. That's great. Um, what do you hope that readers come away with after reading your books?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I hope readers come away with is that it's okay to kind of be questioning the path laid out before you. I think that's something that a lot of teens kind of struggle with, is trying to figure out who they are and where they fit in a world that is constantly changing and feels really fraught, especially right now. And I just really hope that if nothing else, readers come away with the sense that the world is much bigger than it sometimes feels when you're young, and that it's okay to explore things. And if it's a little messy along the way, then that's okay. And things generally work out for the best.
Absolutely. What made you want to become a writer? How did that path start for you?
Oh, it was definitely kind of a tortuous journey, I would say. I was definitely that kid that loved reading growing up and would write my like little short stories and stuff all throughout elementary and middle school, and I always loved writing. I kind of took a little bit of I won't say detour because it's an important part of my life, but I got really interested in the sciences and ended up going to medical school, which is really, if nothing else, honestly, I feel like deepens my writing. I've met so many amazing people and seen so many other aspects of society that I wouldn't have otherwise. But it really wasn't until COVID hit that I kind of got back into writing and really started getting serious about telling longer stories and actually sharing those stories with other people. It really kind of became sort of a cathartic pastime. It was something for me to do outside of the hospital and a way of processing some really like traumatizing experiences at the time. And so it's something I've continued kind of throughout residency and working in the emergency department. And I hope that readers can feel kind of the genuine empathy that people who work in healthcare have for people and trying to understand where they come from and what brought them to this point. And hopefully I convey that in my writing.
I feel like that's something that especially children's literature does a really good job of is expanding the perspective that kids have on various people and backgrounds and stories, whether it's fantasy or realistic fiction or anywhere in between. But having characters who are nuanced and who are deep and have backstories that are rich and robust, and that even if it's someone that is different than someone you've ever met in real life, it gives you that chance to empathize with them in a space that is safe, also. Right, reading a book and that you can set down at any given point, but then when you do go and interact with other people, you have a frame of reference. I love that so much.
Absolutely. No, I love that.
As you're writing, so you have, your primary novels in this series, and then you also have kind of smaller backstories of various characters. Is that part of how you write the book in the first place? Do you build these characters and then kind of develop a story for them, or is that different? Like, how does that fit into your world building?
Yeah, I get distracted easily. I think that comes with being an ER doctor also is constantly like getting distracted by the next shiny object thing. So I will start writing kind of in the main series and I will meet a character that I just fall in love with and have to know everything about them and who they are and how they got here. And while most people can probably just like jot down a few paragraphs and like call it a day, mine tend to stretch for pages and pages and pages, and then I'm like, well, we got to tell their story. Like, this is important. We need to understand this. And so that's how I end up getting all these side novellas. And this most recent one is started as a novella and then became like a 90,000 word, like full length novel. So that is, I tend to continue on far beyond when I probably should stop. So.
But if it's a world that you're into and that you love, you will find readers who will also love that world. So I like that. That's great. Um, what advice would you give to authors or readers as they're embarking on their own personal journeys?
I feel like the biggest thing is not waiting until when you feel ready. I think it's really tempting to just think like, oh, well, when I reach X point or when I have less on my plate or less to do, because life just doesn't work that way. There's always things coming and there's always a reason not to write or a reason not to do the thing that sits on your soul and tells you to follow it. And I think a lot of times the best thing you have to do is just to start and you can start terribly and just be terrible. More people in society should just be okay with being bad at things. I do really strongly believe that. And that's just let it happen, let the words out and just see where it takes you and 9 times out of 10 it'll take you someplace great. So.
That's great advice. Something that I will definitely also take into my own life and follow because sometimes something gets handed to you and you just have to be ready to take it and run with it. Do you have, so you said you have a Kickstarter in the works right now. Is that the only project you're working on? Do you want to tell us more about it? Are there other things that you have going on too?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the Kickstarter is definitely taking up a large chunk of my time at the moment. For anyone who's ever run one, they are big undertakings, and this is the first one I've ever done. So, but been going well so far. One of the funnest things about Kickstarter is that you create what's called stretch goals, which when you like hit different points along the Kickstarter process, it unlocks new elements. So a lot of my time right now is like creating the things that people unlock, and so. I'm writing like a companion lore called the Cross Sea Codex that goes with this story. And so that's one element that I'm just kind of tidying up right now. I'm also working on the next and final book in the main Legion of Numos series, which has been in the works for literal years, as I've been like finishing residency and continuing to get distracted by side stories. But I'm hopeful that that one will get released sometime early next year.
So do you have a team that you work with for this, or is it primarily you? How does your production look?
Yeah, so any indie author will tell you that like this is a neighbor. It takes a village to bring a book into the world. So I have an amazing cover designer that I work with, Natalia Junquera. She works with Dawn Book Design, and she's done the book covers for all of my stories, which are wonderful. She does an amazing job with those. And then I've worked with several different editors over the years, and it depends on if I'm doing a shorter novella versus a longer one. And so there's a couple different ones who have helped out at different parts of the process. I've also built kind of a pretty big beta reader team, which has been amazing. And I know you helped out with one of them a couple years ago too, which was so much fun. It's basically just a team of readers who kind of take a first stab at the story and kind of give you some early feedback before it goes through like the full editing process, which is a lot of fun. And you get some cool insight and even some ideas from people. And so that's been really cool.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed seeing how things have grown since that first book. And then you have this teaser trailer out now also, which is really fun. Was that something that you designed, or did someone give you the idea for that, or how did that work?
Yeah, so a big part of Kickstarter is the video element, which was new for me. I had never done that previously. And so that I did myself actually with Canva and some of the new kind of editing software that's being released right now. It was definitely a new experience and it was a little challenging. But I think it turned out pretty well, and I think it hopefully it kind of gives people a sense of the story and what it's about. A big part of Kickstarter is trying to kind of hook people in with kind of the emotional side of the story and get them invested in the project as a whole. And so videos and kind of direct appeals from authors is a big part of that.
Great. What question did you hope I would ask you, but I didn't?
Ooh. Um, let's see. I guess one thing would be kind of this question of like where authors kind of get ideas for things. I always think that that's always the question that I ask authors is like what inspired like X aspect of the world. We kind of talked a little bit about like the environmental elements of The Remnant, which was a big motivation kind of for writing the story and kind of I think environmentalism in within fantasy is becoming a bigger kind of subgenre and kind of environmental fantasy in those themes. And so that's one that I've become really excited about and really kind of passionate about just incorporating and bringing into the fantasy world because it's something that is really facing a lot of people around the world right now. And something that that kids care a lot about. Teenagers nowadays are very passionate about environmental issues and the teenagers in my life are constantly talking about. And so it's something that I'm hoping that we see more of in young adults and children's literature in general.
Absolutely. So as you're talking about ideas, do you are you one of those people who just kind of wakes up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, I have this great idea and I have to write it down? Or is it something that's more of a slow burn as you have different experiences and they kind of build on each other?
Kind of a combination of both. I definitely am the weird like dream state person that like wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm like trying to find my phone and all that. So I definitely have had those, and half the time I like can't decipher my notes the next morning. I'm like, I have no idea what that was, but I was really excited about it at the time. And then other times it is just kind of inspired by different things that I see kind of in my work. A big part of the Legion of Numos magic system is actually very like healing based. And so a lot of the things that we do every day in the ER, like nerve blocks and fracture repairs, that feeds into the magic system and helps me kind of tease out different aspects of how the magic system works. And so it's definitely kind of a combination of both.
What drew you to the ER specifically? I know that this is not specific related to your books, but I'm curious about where the draw for the ER is for you.
Yeah, I actually was an EMT before going to medical school. So kind of that initial like acute care setting has always been really interesting to me, and it's very exciting and very fast paced. It also is very much a microcosm of society, and so we always joke in the ER that we are the safety net, and we are all of society's issues get represented here in just a much smaller format. So we work with things like homelessness and sexual assaults and alcoholism and all of these really kind of heavy themes that people hear and read about in the news, but we're seeing them represented in individual people and their stories. And that was something that I found really powerful, and just getting to walk with someone through what's a really challenging experience. Um, some people don't like the emergency department because they like having kind of that longer term relationship building with somebody. I personally found that just kind of the intensity of being able to create a connection with someone in a really short period of time was actually really meaningful for me, and just being able to be there when they felt like they had nowhere else to turn is really powerful and something that has definitely factored into my writing and how I just approach the world in general.
Yeah, I think that that's actually very poignant that you say all of that because as you're building these relationships with actual humans in real life, you're also presenting these characters that then readers get to have those sorts of relationship building experiences with in a short-term setting. So I think there's a lot of parallels and synergy in those two environments, and I think it works really well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And also,
So,
doctors are the best storytellers. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Doctors tell the best stories, and the best stories happen in the ER.
so it's not what happens in the ER stays in the ER.
Oh, yeah, and then we come tell about it at dinner. That's
Yeah, that's like Grey's Anatomy or any of those TV shows. That's why there's all the drama there. Everybody wants to know about it.
so much drama.
I love that. So Haley, HB Renault, where can people find you and your books?
Yeah, probably the easiest place is on my website. So hbreneau.com. Maybe you can leave them a link or something to get to it. But from there, they'll be able to see all of the main books in my series, as well as a link to the Kickstarter that's running currently. And the Kickstarter itself will conclude on April 25th. And then the remnant will be available in ebook format and some other paperback formats in a couple months. So.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on all the great things that are happening in your world. I'm so excited to share your stories with everyone, and I'm really looking forward to reading your new ones.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.